So here we are having an opportunity just to hang out and speak more informally, pick up themes, hash out themes, flesh out themes. What do we want to talk about?
Well, I thought it was interesting when you and I were talking the other day about the various levels of suffering and how that relates to dependent origination. And so what and I were talking about was that there's a level of suffering that's sort of the limbic injury trauma level of suffering, which is very dense, very dark, hard to know what's needed there. And then there's kind of a level of suffering that is normal. This is what people, if you get born in these bodies, this is what you suffer. And then there's the sort of transcendent, the other side of the chart that Amma gave us last Wednesday, where you move through in a positive direction, and that's kind of the light. So there's sort of very dark, and light. And I just thought that was an interesting, and Terry, I loved your idea of the chutes and ladders.
Oh.
Right? Because at any moment when you're sort of in ordinary suffering.
Is that Renee's idea?
No, I thought it was Terry's idea. Was it your idea? Did I misattribute?
Yes, it was in the field.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I like this idea because you can be sort of in the world of ordinary suffering, and something can happen, and immediately you're in deep, muddy, dukkha, dark suffering, and it's hard to know where the ladder is then. And so just the interrelation of these three levels and where we find ourselves at any given moment. And anyway, I think it's a fertile, for me anyway, it seems like a very fertile area of investigation.
So I think you did that conversation total justice in terms of giving a really accurate summary of what it was that we were talking about. And there's a couple things that I want to add. So at the last class I spoke about the Chaitanya Sutta, which is that when you set up the condition of ethics, then that then gives rise to an unfolding path that does not require volition, does not require a huge effort. And so what's really helpful to recognize is that effortless effort is absolutely not available when you're in the denser realm. That there's no effortless effort is incomprehensible from that denser realm. And so part of the reason why I think these levels of density are so helpful is that they contextualize that in these different density levels, what our capacities are hugely different. And so the Chaitanya Sutta may be particularly useful, relevant, and speaking to your experience when you're in this very undense level, this lightest level. But in the middle level or in the densest level, there's no availability to that.
And kind of, anyway, a lot of the retreats I've been to and a lot of the teachings that I've heard assume that you're not in this dense level, right? And there's no sort of instruction or what to do if that's where you find yourself in that particular moment.
So then not only is there no teaching about what to do if you find yourself, but there's no real understanding about the chutes that can lead you there in an instant. From any of the other levels of density. So you could be in the most light level and something can happen and in an instant you're in hell. You're in the deepest, darkest, murkiest hell.
Prefrontal cortex is offline. You are just, 2 years old and completely confused and what is going on. And it can take a long time to recover any kind of functional thought processes. My experience anyway. The thing that's kind of difficult, I find, is that on retreat, I'm especially vulnerable to going down a chute. That somehow the busyness of ordinary life, the sort of defense mechanisms that we have in place, keep you from diving so deep. And a lot of those are stripped away on retreat. And so it doesn't take much. It just boom. And then you find yourself in a place where you can't talk to anybody, right? And you're like, okay, now what?
I have a different take, and I'm not sure if my take is the same thing. So when I'm on retreat, I find a lot of my defense mechanisms go down because I'm finally in a place where I'm able to process things. I've kicked down the road. You know what I mean? I kick the can, I kick the can, I kick the can. And on retreat, I have to deal with it. You know what I mean? Because there's no more kicking. So
right.
So then, then I'm sort of forced to open to it, and look at it in all its yuckiness. Is that kind of what you're talking about, or is it different?
I think it's different because my capacity to look at things, my capacity to investigate, my capacity even to be mindful is kind of gone at that moment. And I'm really deep in mud, murky, I don't know sort of where I am or what I'm doing, and I'm really lost, like truly in terror, in grief, and it takes used to take way longer. I can now pull myself out more quickly, but look at this.
It's
Murphy.
the,
I
just.
think there's just a wrapper in
Yeah,
there.
that's
Yeah.
right. It's little cheese.
He's on it.
Cheese.
Anyway, that's my experience there, is that I get non-functional.
But Judy, one of the other things that I'm wondering about is, the daily stuff, getting up, washing dishes, making breakfast, they're all functional tasks that are intricative to their own level of being able to do things. And that when you do things like that, there's a sense of, I'm okay and I'm able to do that stuff. Well, one of the other things that happens on retreat is all of those baking breakfast and washing the dishes, all of those things are also not happening.
True.
So some of the ways that we locate ourselves is gone because the ordinary daily life tasks are minimalized so to the extreme when we're on retreat. So I'm when I hear you speak, like just now, I sense that there's two levels. One is that the defense mechanisms that make you more susceptible to the chutes, that's happening, but also the regulation systems that keep you pulled back or pulled into functionality are also not so strong. So you get a double dose. And it's and so the window of tolerance of how to navigate that in a way that isn't really challenging it's tough. It's a tough ask.
And it's not just me, I'm not
Oh,
talking
no.
about me. I'm talking about all of us who have some trauma in our background. We're all susceptible to that.
You think it's more intense than in regular life.
That's been my experience.
Mhm.
I don't know. But I can get really triggered on retreat.
Mm.
And part of it is the isolation and not being able to speak to anybody. And you know, because community connection with other human beings really, especially if you're in a triggered place, if you're in a place of real deep suffering, is super important.
But it's speaking, it's eye contact, it's
Mhm.
physical contact, it's
Mhm.
affection, it's hugs,
Mhm.
it's, you know, it's a lot more than just speaking.
Yeah.
And how did it ever develop that silence and isolation were the keys to,
Well,
I understand, you know, you want to get into yourself and internal, but, you know.
I think it's entirely contextual. And
Yeah.
and the context is that at the time of the Buddha, 2,600 years ago, there was no sense of a separate individual self. And so everybody's sense of themselves was completely embedded in relationship. The village, the clan, the family unit, the work,
Tribe.
the tribe, and so the silent solitary was a complete reset to the embeddedness of relationship. But I haven't had any, I mean, their relational fields were intact. They were not ruptured. So you take us in our modern world with so many of us dealing with ruptured relational fields. And it's a completely different kettle of fish in terms of it's dysregulating rather than hugely helpful.
I think I don't know, my experience is it kind of works both ways, is that being in regular life and the relative world that we live in is, there's so many distractions, you know, and so it's easy to kind of get distracted, but there's also a lot of triggers at the same time, you know, like in relationship, like you're saying, even in relationships we have triggers, you know, and so the one thing nice about the silence of a retreat, I think, is that a lot of those are actually removed. Now you're down to the core level of stuff, you know, that maybe it's easier to see it, you know, and maybe we're, you know, feeling it, you know, every day, although I have my moments in my regular life, and you know, I go deep down, and you know, it's dark place, and then it passes though. Right? It's not, you know, it's not permanent, it just passes. And then I just had an experience like this for like a week, you know, I was really down in the depths, and then all of a sudden it just kind of flipped or something. I don't know what happened. You know, there was nothing I did, you know, actively to try to, other than worry about it, and what made it worse. So, man, I don't know. Yeah, there's something. Yeah, but I have the same problem in retreats also. You know, because there's so many different experiences that I have in retreat that are so different than regular life, you know, and because there aren't the distractions, there aren't the relationship issues, you know, you don't have to tell your story to anybody or listen to somebody else's story, and, you know, so you're really there, you know, kind of in the raw self, and then that's actually, I think, where then I start, you know, going to this place of trying to understand self, you know. So what is that that little story that goes on, you know, in meditation for me all the time, that's something I struggle with, feeling, trying to get to that place of no self, that we keep talking about. But I had a kind of an epiphany about that the other day. I go to this what I call a spiritual therapist, and we were just doing that exercise, of being aware of what was happening in the moment, and it being, really kind of being oriented in awareness, and seeing things as they arise and pass. And so a lot of times when I get in that place, I'm thinking, well, there's still a me here. It still feels like there's a me here, and the little me, or whatever you want to call it. And he says, well, just the fact that you feel that, I call it a felt sense, And he said, well, a felt sense is just another thing arising, in consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah, I never recognized that before. I always got tied up around, oh, gee, there still feels like there's a self here, I'm supposed to get rid of it, and everything, and it's really it's not different than anything else that's arising and passing, senses and feelings and thoughts and
Beautiful.
all that.
Beautiful.
No, I don't know. And that was illuminating, because then I felt, okay, that week passed, and it wasn't great, but then before that I had a couple of wonderful things at the retreat. When we had the day long, I felt really great. I was in real joy, for several days after that, and then later, I keep wondering, well, where did that go, and all the other things come up. So it's just the impermanence of it. It's just getting used to that. It's just to me, it's just becoming aware enough that even that is just arising and passing. And so, whoops. Uh-oh. Oh boy. And so for me, that's the struggle, to just have that awareness, really, really focusing in on minute-to-minute awareness, what's going on, and seeing it more clearly.
I'm not saying that every moment that I'm on retreat is terrible, because I would stop going if that were true. And there are a lot of really wonderful experiences there. I just feel like some folks who maybe that at least 50% of the people there could benefit from some more support.
I was just having a conversation with somebody, and then they shared with me some articles about complex PTSD. And the nature of complex PTSD is it changes the nervous system and the brain's configuration in a particular way. And one of the ways that it changes it is its ability to self-soothe and to self-regulate.
Mm-hmm.
And so what this reminds me of is that when you go into a retreat, so you've got a whole bunch of people who don't know each other who go into silence immediately. There's no sense of cohesive fabric. There's no sense of a relational field that you can trust, that you can relax into.
Well, that's the thing, because your story about sorry to interrupt,
Please
but
go
your
ahead,
story about the bear,
Yeah,
and that your mind let go
Right.
in that moment of terror.
yeah,
It feels to me like that this mind
Yes.
won't let go unless there is safety, right? That safety is sort of a prerequisite for the nervous system to relax enough that the mind is willing to let go, even a small amount.
but I think that that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And so when we look at these different levels of density, okay, what safety looks like looks different.
Yeah, right,
Ah,
right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
mm-hmm.
So at this densest level, safety is like this.
Yeah, like hold me.
Exactly.
Yeah,
With warm, friendly people.
yes.
Okay? It's not an abstract
And time.
thing. Exactly.
And time.
You know, so that it's like with enduring relationships that you can trust.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? With the next level, I think it's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a little bit, there can be a sense of a collective field in silence together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And in the next level, safety is the relaxing into awareness itself.
Right.
Okay?
And that's what happened when you were with the bear. is
Exactly.
That you just, there
I
was no
went-
other option at that point.
I went there.
Yeah.
Right. So I also think that there's a difference between trauma that comes after you have had experiences of dropping into pure awareness
Mm-hmm.
and trauma that happens like in a young person before
Yeah,
they've
I
had.
think your brain is really formed differently. I really feel like that it's a you know, people who have like a missing leg, right? Everybody can see that they have a missing leg and accommodations are made sometimes. But when your brain is formed in a different way, nobody can see that. And so it's assumed that you can just function. Well, some days I can and some days I can't.
Right. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, all that stuff, you know, so much of it's hidden. There's all, you know, hidden in the implicit memory, you know, that you're carrying around all the time. That's all the conditioning is piling up over
Right.
time.
Right.
The thing I worry about with all of this is that living in our daily life, living my daily life, I feel like I'm just reconditioning. You know, I'm continuously conditioning myself in negative ways. You know.
So you're making the groove, getting the groove even harder, deeper and deeper, and
Yeah, right. It's like you know, how do you ever get to
Carry on,
balance
yeah.
with that? I don't know.
So Renee, you had some, I love the things that you were sharing the last class that we had.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering in this conversation, what is landing in you, because your own practice and journey with all this stuff is so rich right now.
Yeah. A few things I was thinking, I have like many different thoughts bubbling around. Like one thing I think I was sharing with you maybe after our conversation last time was about this retreat that we did in August for our trans community, where really everyone coming into the retreat was coming in with a lot of trauma, many different kinds of trauma. And so we created a container that gave people options to stay in silence and also options to have times during the day to connect with other people.
Cool.
And actually we kind of watched people move in and out of that. Like there were some people who were just like really wanted to stay in silence, and then like day 3 or 4, I saw some of them start to take the options to connect with people, and then other people came in being like, I can't be in silence, and we really provided those places for them to connect with people. Like we actually like had separate spaces for meals where people could be talking, and then like had times in the afternoon where there would be extra groups that people could be in and that kind of stuff, but kept the overall container silent. And it was really fascinating just to kind of see the ways that like some people came in like, there's no way I can be in silence, and then after several days were like, oh, I wanna, you know, spend some time in silence. And by creating that like choose your own adventure.
optional.
Yeah, it felt like a really like a container that really supported people.
That's great.
And it was one thing, like I didn't really realize this until a few weeks ago, but someone said to me, you know, nobody left.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, nobody left.
Wow,
Like we had
that is
50 people on this retreat who normally would be like the 2 or 3 people
Who
that-
left the retreat?
Right, who left the retreat or who needed a lot of extra care or
Uh-huh.
whatever that,
You had 50 of them.
But we had 50. And everyone stayed.
Wow.
And there was like people came in really rough shape and left really with a lot of joy and opening, and it was really beautiful, but it wasn't the typical silent container. We really recognized that there are people who are just not going to be able to do that.
Right.
Just really not going to be able to do it. Yeah, and I feel like for me, there was a time when the silent container, like had such a hard time being with other humans, that actually the silent container was really supportive. It allowed me to just be in space with other humans and like breathe with them. And now I'm in a place where it feels so re-traumatizing of the particular kind of like trauma due to neglect that I experienced, that I just can't, like I have not been able to be in a silent retreat for the last couple of years. The last time I went on it, it was just like, I was like, I can't
Get me
do
out of here.
it. I just, it felt really so painful.
So was that, is
So
that-
it's just, yeah, so I feel like I'm kind of creating the container that I want to practice in right now. And it was beautiful to see how it did really hold folks. This was like a 4-night, so not super long, but it was, yeah. And the other thing that's popping around in my mind is I've just been learning a little bit about polyvagal theory. I don't know if anyone knows.
What is it called?
It's called polyvagal theory.
What's his name?
Porges,
Yeah.
and it's actually looks at how our nervous system reacts at different levels of safety. And so like one level is called safe and social, and there a lot of your focus is like heart to face, like you're able to be connected with other people, you feel safe, you have an animated face, you have an animated voice. And then the next level is fight and flight, and there your energy is going into your limbs, and so a lot of focus is in the limbs, and your energy goes out of your face, so you have like a more no affect. And then the next level is shutdown, freeze, and just like it looks at really what is actually happening physiologically in each of those states. And I was just listening to this. I'm listening to like this podcast, and it was talking about the safe and social, and that's where you have a full breath. And you have access to belly breathing, and in the other states you don't have access to belly breathing. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is a whole layer we need with the 4 foundations of mindfulness.
Yeah.
To be like, we can work with the breath if you're in safe and social.
Right.
But if you're in these other 2 levels, you don't have access to the breath.
It's
You
not
just
a-
simply don't have access to the breath.
And that's a physiological
And
thing.
it's a physiological
It's
thing
not
you
like
have
you
no
do
control
control.
over. There's
Exactly.
no volition.
Right.
Over these states you have no volition.
Right. And so all the times that you think, oh, what a bad person I am, I can't do this.
Right.
It's
No.
not that.
No, it is simply you cannot access it.
Yeah.
So it's just really like, it's an overlay, kind of like we've been talking about with limbic injury, that's like, oh, we need this overlay
Totally need the overlay.
to be able to access the teachings.
So I want to talk about an experience that I had, and let's see if we can weave it back in. I can't remember, well, it was summertime. So we had the fires in October 2017, and I had been a part of Threshold Choir, and the fires, my health just took a nosedive, and I didn't yet have a handle on all of the 9 yards, but I had understood that part of the problem was toxicity. So I went to Colorado to do part of a Panchakarma cleanse, which is an Ayurvedic detox. And Threshold was having its international gathering in Boulder. And so it happened that I was nearby, and I went. at a last minute to this conference. There were 300 people there, and Threshold sings these gorgeous songs. But the prospects of being in a new place with 300 people, with different food, with everything out of my control, had me on the edge of being like almost totally overwhelming, you know. But what Threshold had done as part of set up the conference grounds for this 4 or 5 day whatever, was to create a room where there was a telephone number. So if you went into this room and there were not people there to sing Threshold songs to you with candlelight and in a reclining chair, you could call this cell phone number and they would come. And the Threshold songs are like gorgeous. They're a cappella 3-part harmony, like to melt you, to hold you, to wrap you in love, okay? So whoever set up the conference knew that because it was going to be a big thing, that there was going to be some people for whom this was actually going to be really important. Mm-hmm. And to have a place that was set up that way, to go, that was available 24 hours a day, it was like, it made such a huge difference. Now, this is a Threshold Choir conference. This is not a silent retreat.
Right.
But even still, you know, from where I was at that point, it was really helpful to know that there was a small little place that had that kind of holding it was designed for, and people who were willing to come
and hold you. Wow.
So it's like, I think we need to create that kind of a space on retreats, you know, where there's songs and there's tenderness and there's deep attunement and there's absolute holding. And in that context, people were not talking, but it was still hugely regulating. Hugely regulating. So if I was having something, all I needed to do was think about the fact that that space was there, and sometimes that's all I needed to get me to enough regulation that I could manage the whatever that was going on. But you see, oftentimes, well, like I have been on so many retreats with teachers or monastics that have like zero understanding of these dense realms. And so there's no creating the holding that's needed. But when you have a retreat with a bunch of people who have a deep understanding of this territory, it's genius that you created a structure that allowed people to move between silence and connectivity. That's genius.
Yeah, and it was very much like just happening in the moment, because we weren't quite sure what the right holding was going to be, but we let it keep shifting as we went, you know, as we kind of heard what people needed. So each day we were kind of shifting the way that the balance between silence and talking was being held. And then actually in the final day we just like, we let it all go, because there was no containing the joy and connection that was happening. But yeah, we actually just wrote an article for Lion's Roar about it. It just went up on the website. I'll send it. Send it around in email.
So was somebody leading that? Was there a teacher that was leading it all?
There was a team. So I
Renee
was one
was
of
on the
4
team.
teachers
Oh, okay.
on that team.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
And did the teachers do Dharma talks and things like that, or?
We did. We didn't do any traditional Dharma talks. Like in that evening Dharma talk time, we would have. We would sometimes do like I do a lot of panels when I'm teaching, where I have a few teachers and we'll all talk on the same topic. And it's nice because you start to really get that everyone has a different way of kind of holding the Dharma. So we did a number of panels, and a lot of them actually were more about kind of like life experience, Dharma and life experience, because it was talking about our gender journeys and how that intersected with our Dharma. And then we would also have a lot of discussion. So we would have like, maybe 3 people each talking for 10 minutes apiece, and then moving into small group discussion. And then we did a lot of guided meditations. So we would do like, 2 Brahma Vihara sessions each day, and that would have a little bit of teaching along with the guided. But there were no 45-minute Dhamma talks.
I wondered if some of the folks who hadn't had much to say, if they wanted an opportunity to
What comes to mind at the moment is how important it is to communicate the alternative kind of retreat, to be open to creating it as you go along.
Yeah.
Because if people aren't more aware of all of these things that we've been talking about, how can they be included, be available, even thought about as a possibility for other retreats? And I think people sounded to me like what was created at your retreat. People need to feel that they're not alone, that they're included, that they're connected. And I was having a conversation this morning with a woman who is the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, and how they have the second generation, just all the different things that community has done because of the just trauma that it goes on past that generation. It was just an amazing, interesting work, and it's just very, very similar. They need to find a place where they always felt different, to feel that even though they've had a different experience, they need to feel within their community that they have somebody that they can talk to. And because when we're all in our little silent retreat or whatever, we think we're the only one. And just to talk about it is, everybody has a different experience when they go on retreat. But you and other people I've spoken with have it's really a difficult experience.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has a little anxiety before they go on retreat, whatever. And one of the ways I got myself through that was always saying, you can always leave. That is an option. Nobody is. And that sort of safety valve.
Right. Oh, that's good.
And the thing about finding the ladders, I wish I could really, figure that out, because there are times it's confusing or it's dark, and then something shifts and you're out of it.
Right,
And
you didn't even climb a ladder.
No, it
Just right up.
Just got elevated up.
And sometimes that's been when there's been really significant stuff, and that just all of a sudden, that was whatever phase of life that was for 6 months or a year or whatever, that's the spiral goes on. And it's sort of disquieting on some level. If I could I always felt like I wanted to track the steps that got me there, but it just doesn't seem possible. The only thing that I've been able to do is lay the groundwork with the Dharma. And that it's not that I don't go down the chute, but at least I'm not going completely down the drain, which at some point I really felt I was circling the drain. And actually reading back my writing today, I went, oh, you were pretty close to circling the drain. And I get out faster, but more there's a different ground, and I've built that in my 25 30 years of meditation. And I'm much more solid, and I feel fortunate for that.
I want to thank Judy for saying, who hasn't said stuff, because I was really, really moved by Renee's retreat experience, and it just really resonated with certain things for me. From it, I've been going to retreats since 2000, and for the first few years, the only places I felt I could plug in were the people of color retreats. And, but I felt like I needed to move beyond that, because there were so many new people getting pulled into the Dharma. I felt like I needed to learn deeper things. But it was really hard. It still is very hard to go to retreats where you can count, and you can literally count how many people of color there are. And I think in the beginning, they didn't quite know what to do with us. So I remember one year in particular, I had a roommate who was also Asian, and we couldn't figure out how we ended up together. And then we noticed that there were 2 or 3 other suites of people, or dorm people, or people who were Asians, and it's kind of like, why are we there? And then on the one hand, it's really cool. On the other hand, why do they do this? So it was like just this unsettling feeling throughout the whole retreat. So there's always this constant back and forth. And I think recently they've done this thing where, the people of color can sit in silence, but it's just a tremendous thing to have even that level, even in silence. It's a community. And there's this sharing, this energy sharing thing. It's like you are not alone, which has just been tremendously, it just helps the heart. It's, and nothing against the white folks. It's it's just a different experience, and not really knowing where to put it, So there's a lot of joy in hearing, because it's always hard. It's always hard.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, there's this other layer around the silence, and I know Larry Yang talks about this a lot, of for folks, I mean, particularly connecting for those of us in the LGBT community who went through the AIDS era, is that whole through the era with AIDS.
AIDS.
Through the period of AIDS, in the 80s and 90s, and the whole silence equals death, and having this whole other connotation.
Silence.
Yeah, and when I was actually just thinking, you were reminding me when I was on the month-long a couple years ago, we had the POC affinity group, and then there was also the LGBT affinity group. And one thing that was really interesting that happened in the LGBT affinity group is we would all sit together in silence in the council house, and then at the end, we would all bow and make eye contact with each person in the circle.
Yes.
And that
That
felt
makes a difference.
it felt so just making eye contact with everyone once a day was so sustaining, and also it felt so subversive.
That's good.
Because there's so much of this thing about don't make eye contact. And I think when you're in a marginalized group, it is so crucial to have that connection. At least it felt like it for me. It felt like we were just anchoring ourselves. We would just make the eye contact and okay, we're gonna make it through another day.
That's good.
Yeah, that contact.
Yeah, I would like that. I like the solitude and the silence, but just to have some kind of feeling. Either the affinity group, but I'm white, so I mean, that's most of the other people there. But a small group, just nodding to each other, just acknowledging. Yeah.
When Ajahn Amaro and I taught the first monastic retreat at Spirit Rock in 1995, And it was on that retreat that I took people into the unfinished basement and I had them doing songs and singing, and it was unfinished, so we took pencils and we wrote sutras and quotes and poems and chants and songs on the walls before they painted them.
That's great.
But it was since then, 1995, that I had dreamed about putting music and meditation together. So when Melanie and I did that day-long retreat in May, I was more excited about that than I had been about any other teaching I have ever done in the 25 years that I've been teaching, because I'd waited for it for 25 years, and I adore Melanie. I mean, I absolutely adore Melanie. But what happened on that retreat, so it's a day-long, it's not a residential retreat and it's not a week-long retreat, it's a day-long retreat. But it was as if the whole of everybody was welcome into that space and woven into a wholeness, okay? And the reviews for it reflected that. People had things to say about that retreat that they have never said about retreats before.
And so why isn't there another one?
So what?
I can tell you, I mean, it's crazy what goes on with this whole stuff, but
Yeah.
you know, there's a whole politic. So I
Right.
tried to get her involved, and it's like yes and no, and you can and you can't. So I'm trying, but I think part of the reason why that retreat was so effective is that nobody felt marginalized.
Yeah, well, you know, I always feel marginalized in a group, right? Like any group that I'm in, I always feel like, oh, I don't belong here. That was one day I felt like I belonged.
Exactly.
I was like, what happened?
Can you
Oh,
say
you
a
were
little
in
bit
that?
what it was?
You were in
it
that
was
same
Melanie.
one? You were in
Yeah.
that one?
Yes,
Oh,
she
okay.
came. Yeah.
Nice.
So Melanie, do you know Melanie DeMore? She's a local singer-songwriter, and she's absolutely fucking awesome. Like hands down, no question about it. She's a total rock star, and she's a genius, and her genius spans many different levels. She uses music as her medium, but she's one of the most profoundly spiritual beings I have ever in my life met.
And she can galvanize a room to that level of spirituality, just like, boom.
Like in an instant.
Yeah.
Like in an absolute instant. So her power of transmission in terms of cathecting an energetic field, I have never seen anybody as effective as she is. Okay, so we were combining.
And then there's, let's not forget that Amma was there as well. So you've got Melanie's energy, and you've got Amma's energy, and you've got 100 people in the Great Hall there.
So it was.
And between them, they just like, boom.
It was the movement between loving kindness meditation, body awareness meditation, pure awareness meditation, and Melanie and her magic, which is cathecting a group into a community cohesiveness, into music and song and rhythm and chanting
And stick pounding.
and you could just see it in people's eyes. You could see it, the sense of every part of every person was like coming home.
No, but I went to the one in San Francisco.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
we were there.
Yes. You guys were both there. Yeah.
Okay, this is the same event.
Yes.
Same,
okay,
no,
'cause
this
you're
is
saying-
same event,
this
same
is-
melody though.
The same melody,
Melody.
but Spirit Rock is where the other one was.
Right,
Right,
and the
right.
other one was a mixture of music and song, and on that day-long event in San Francisco, I was more wigged out than I have hardly ever remembered. Because one of my medicines is bee venom.
Oh, yeah.
I sting myself, and I have to sting my neck and my forehead, and I should do it once a week, but it wipes me out, so I do it about once every 6 weeks. But I had done it too soon to that teaching,
Oh.
and so I was knocked out. So you didn't have me in power. You had me disabled on that day.
We had Melody though. Yeah.
Melanie was there.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
was there.
Yeah, part of her magic is she brings her total self.
Completely.
And it just sweeps you with her.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
So
I still love that sword.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Melanie-
instantly.
Melanie was very generous and came and offered to help with the mom's memorial. And so it's like she sits quietly, she doesn't engage in any conversation with anybody. She sits quietly in her own space. And then it's like normal people bridge, you know, they go from a something to a something and they take some time. She sat down, got up, and in 1 second, the energy shifted. It's like she doesn't bridge. She just pops. I don't know how she does it, but she does it. So it's like it normally there's this whole process to get people to change. She didn't take no process. She just inhabits the space and then insists that everybody joins her. Right now.
I think it's just she worked with kids for years and years and years.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Yeah.
it is, but it's amazing.
Yeah. I think she's had a lot of practice. I remember her saying once at one event I went to with Desara at that she had just like worked with elementary kids and taught them as a music teacher.
No, there's something special about music, I think, anyway. You know, if anybody that's halfway good at it, it changes the environment, you know, totally. And I my brother-in-law is in a little rock and roll band, and we went to see him the other night, and I was envious, actually, that they could play like that,
Yeah.
you know? And then it's just the music just fills the space, and you're just, you know, immersed in it. It's great.
So there is something about music, and I think one of the things about music is it completely bypasses our cognitive
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes right down.
Yeah.
Right down at the gut.
And depending on what kind of music is, it'll resonate with different things. But I think part of Melanie's magic is just the power of music. You can galvanize people really quickly with rhythm and harmony and song, because that's the nature of music.
Yeah. There's a really connecting nature to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can I just say that I'm going to turn into a pumpkin in 10 minutes?
Yes, I'm aware. So what would be a good way of closing if we've got 10 minutes? How can we wrap this up in a way that leaves everyone feeling content and settled and easy and well and full and happy?
Well, I'm just very grateful because, as I said, I usually feel on the outside of any group, and tonight I don't feel on the outside. So it's a lovely thing.
So what happened tonight that shifted that for you?
Beats the fuck out of me. I don't know.
It's a magic laugh.
Yeah. I don't know.
Before we close, I just want to check in with Bev because I kind of feel like people talked a lot, and then
Oh,
just wanna make sure you have space.
I'm here. I would have said something if I wanted to. Yeah. No, because I feel new to the group. Maybe, I don't know, Tom, are you new to the group?
I'm very new.
Yeah, I'm very new,
Right.
yeah, so I'm a little less forthcoming, but I'm taking it all in.
Well, I was pretty impressed by the variations in retreats that you all talked about. You know, and I have a whole, the ones I've been to are different as well. And so, geez, there's a lot of ways to construct these things, you know, It means a lot, actually, but it gives that different aspects, doesn't it? I mean, the way it's all organized, and the teacher, and everything that's going on there. There's so many ways to do it. It's awesome.
It is awesome. Yeah. It is awesome.
Now I know why people go to retreats a lot.
So I'd like to suggest that we close the evening with a round of I am leaving this evening with an open sentence stem that you can finish it in any way you like. And I would like to invite somebody who feels ready to begin, and then we can just go in we point the direction it goes in, we'll go in a circle afterwards. I'm leaving this evening with
I'm leaving this evening with a happy heart, grateful for our community, grateful for the generosity of everyone who's here and for Renee for hosting us, and I do so thank them for driving.
Do you want to send it in a direction?
Mm-hmm.
I am leaving this retreat with more tranquil stability than when I came in. And I love the doggies. Even the naughty one.
I'm leaving this gathering with calmness and gratitude.
I'm leaving with,
You aren't going anywhere.
stay right here, but I'll,
Sorry.
leaving this gathering.
Yeah, okay.
With gratitude and a sense of fullness, and also really grateful for getting to eat together. Something for me that's really sweet about that, and also like curiosity and desire to learn more.
I am leaving this retreat with a sense of belonging.
I am leaving this evening with happy feeling, a full tummy, a warm heart, grateful to relax and come in my schlumpy clothes, and to feel like I don't have to prepare anything to make this happen. Happy for Judy to be on my case a little bit to make sure that to encourage that this did happen. Hugely grateful for Renee for hosting. Fabulously grateful for all of the yummy things that came to eat. And just touched by the level of honesty and reveal and intimacy and closeness. So feeling very grateful.
I'm also grateful for the sharing that was happened here tonight, because I learned a lot, but it also made me be curious also to learn more. So, yeah, gratitude and curiosity.
So we've got 4 minutes before your pumpkin hour.
Is your
We
pumpkin
could do a
outside?
song. What if we did a song?
What if we did a song?
Sing a song.
Do you have
I can lead a song, yeah. Let me just pull up my cheat sheet.
While Renee's looking for a song, I just want to do a quick announcement. I'll bring out some postcards later. I'm having a pottery sale December 1st. To let you know, and I'll give you more information. It's a fundraiser for a friend of mine who's in prison for something he didn't commit. He served 11 years out of 23, so it's for his defense fund.
He's in prison for what?
He's in prison for rape.
I
Did
thought
not-
you said when
He did not commit, you know, but
oh.
they're trying to
Oh, okay.
get him out, so. Yeah.
Oh,
Adamu Chan?
Do you have your song?
I do. Alright, I'm gonna do this like call and response. And I think we'll do it call and response, then we can do it a second time and sing it all the way through, maybe a couple times. It's pretty short. The song is called I Am Grateful to Be. So I'll sing a line and then you all sing it, and then we'll keep going like that. Like the bird in the sky.
Like the bird in the sky,
Like the dragonfly.
like the dragonfly,
Like the leaves glistening bright.
like the leaves glistening bright.
What lives in them lives in me.
What lives in them lives in me.
I am grateful to be.
I am grateful to be.
Breathing, heart beating, joyous and free.
Breathing, heart beating, joyous and free.
Even though hard times are all around me.
Even though hard times are all around me.
I am grateful to be.
I am grateful to be.
Alright, you wanna try it through all the way? Sure. One more.
Give us a start.
Okay. Like
The bird in the sky, like the dragonfly,
like the leaves glistening bright.
what lives in them lives in me. I am grateful to be. Breathing, heart beating, joyous and free. Even though hard times are all around me, I am grateful to be. I am grateful to be.
Again? Okay.
Great.
Or
One more
it's
time.
not-
Can we do one more time?
One more time?
Okay.
Like the bird in the sky, like the dragonfly, like the leaves glistening bright.
What
Lives in them lives in me. I am grateful to be. Breathing, heart beating, joyous and free. Even though hard times are all around me, I am grateful to be. I am grateful to be.
That's, thank you.
Yeah.
What can we do to help?
Can we help clean up?